Hello everybody, my name is Krishna.Kishore and welcome back to my channel. If you remember, in our previous session we have discussed about the basic Docker commands which we used on the day-to-day basis, and in this video let's discuss about the regular advanced Docker commands. Let's get started. So let's begin with the context to copy files from local machine to the container and vice versa. Okay, in real-time environment we get to do such kind of activities for troubleshooting, configuration, so on and so forth, wherein we tend to copy the files from our local machine to the Docker container and from Docker container to the local machine. So let's switch to our terminal. Let's see the running Docker containers. We don't have any running Docker container, but we might have some exited Docker container. So we have this couple of containers which are in the exited status, so we can start them. So how to start the exited Docker container is Docker container start and the container name. So let's start my web host, Docker container start container name. Okay, we see that the container has started. Let's check with the Docker PS. Yes, so we can see that the container has started and it's in the running state. So what do we do now is let's create a sample file as, let's do it as sample file from local machine, something like this. Machine. Okay, we have this file and let's copy this file from our local machine to the container. Okay, sample file local machine to the container. Okay, the command is container name followed by the path where we wanted to copy the file. Okay, let's copy at the home path. So the command is docker copy the file name, the container name and the path where we would like to copy the file. Let's hit this. Okay, so we can see that the container, the file has copied to the container. So let's log into the container and see. Okay, let's log into the container and see whether we're able to see the file over there. So the command is exec -it container name and the command which we wanted to run. Okay, let's do it as sh. Unable to start the container, no such file or the directory it's saying. Okay, so that's, I think it's bin sh instead of sh. Yeah, okay, so I'm onto the container now. So why I was not able to log in with /sh is I don't have the file or the directory /sh and there is no such path in that container. Instead it is bin sh. So I'm logging onto the container by switching or by running onto the sh shell, right? As you know, we have several shells: sh shell, ksh shell, zsh shell, so on and so forth, right? So in this container we have sh shell. So let's switch to the home path and see whether we have this file, right? So we have sample file local machine, right? So with this we have able to copy the file from local machine to the container. Now let's see how to copy the files from container to our local machine. So let's create one another sample file from container, right? From container, right? So we have this file, sample file from container. All right, and this is there in this path, /path. Okay, let's exit from the running container. Yeah, and let's get the file from the container over here. So the command is docker cp, our container name, my web host, the path, and the file name, sample file from container. So this was our file name, and we would like to copy the current directory. Okay, so it says that it has successfully copied. Let's see. Right, so we have the file, namely sample file from container. So this is the way how we can copy the files from our local machine to the running container and from container to the local machine. And another context is to list the ports which are connected or opened to the container, right? But when do we require this? We require this when we wanted to see the list of ports open or connected to the container for some operations, right? How do we do that is, let's clear this screen. So the command is docker container port and the container name. In our case, the container name is my web host. Okay, so we can see that this container is having the map from the local machine 81 to the container port 80 at the movement, right? So we can see that over here as well. Docker ps, if we do docker ps, so we can see that the local machines 80 the local machine port 81 is routed to the or mapped to the container port 80. So the command is docker container port and the container name. One another context is one another context is to see the processes of the container, process details of the container. So the command is, let's clear the screen. So the command is docker top and the container name, my web host, right? So we can see what are all the processes are running inside the container without logging onto the container, right? So we can see that the processes, the process IDs are 1405 1469. This is the parent process ID, and since when the processes are running, this the start time of the process, time to leave, and the command. Okay, so this is the way to list down the running processes of a given container. All right, one another context is to one another context is to see, to know the CPU and memory details of the container, and we require this when we wanted to troubleshoot any issue, and we tend to see if a given container CPU and the memory utilization is not up to the mark or greater than 80% or 90%, and the command is docker stats. So this gives us the CPU and the memory details of running container. So in our case, only one container is in the running status, which is my web host, and it is giving out the CPU, memory, network, and other details of the running container. So we can see this is a container ID, name of the container, how much is the CPU utilization, memory, the network input output, what is the process ID, right? What is the process ID? So this way we can know the CPU and the memory details of the container. And one another command is to know the disk details of containers. So the command is docker system df, right? So this gives us the disk details, or how many images are totally there on the system, how many are active, what is the size consumed by all the images, how many containers are there, how many volumes we have created, so on and so forth. So usually on the Linux flavors we see the disk details with the df-kh, something like that, right? df-kh. And on the Docker, if we wish to know the images, containers, and the volume details, the command is docker system df. And one another context is to list and clean up unwanted images. And this is very important now, right? Because when we work in the real-time environment in the organization or on our local machine, we tend to create so many images, we tend to work with so many images, but those images are unwanted images, or out of those images we haven't created the container. So those images are called dangling images. So what are the dangling images? Dangling images are images which doesn't have the repository, which doesn't have the name, which out of which we did not create any containers. So those images are just lying on the machine. Eventually, as we end up working with several images, we end up having so many dangling images on our machine, consuming the good amount of the hardware resources. Okay, so we'll first see what are the dangling images we have, how to list down the dangling images across the machine, and how to clean up the dangling images. So let's switch to the terminal. Let's clear the screen first. Okay, so how to see the dangling images? The command is docker images -f within the quotes dangling equals to true. Okay, so at the movement we do not have any dangling images, but eventually we would have them. Okay, so let's first create the dangling images, list them out, and then we'll see how to clean up the dangling images. So let's create a sample docker file. Okay, let's write some simple, let's take the simple base image. Let's just have a echo message, something else, hello world for now. All right, so this is the image. Let's save and let's create a image out of this docker file. Okay, something else, my test dangling image. Okay, so we are creating the docker image from the docker file. So let's
list the images, docker images. So the image name which we have created is my test dangling image. So we have my test dangling image here. Okay, now but this is not the dangling image. Okay, so we just created a sample image out of the docker file. Now let's tweak the docker file, the same docker file. Let's tweak the docker file by just editing the echo message, and let's create the image with the same name. Okay, now let's list the images, docker images. See, so we have an image which doesn't have any repository mapped to, which doesn't have any tag, but it has the image ID. So now let's see whether that can be the dangling images or not. So the command is docker images -f dangling equals to true. See, so we have one dangling image at the moment. Okay, so likewise, when we work in our companies or in our local machine, as I just said, so we tend to end up having this several docker image, so we would be focusing on something else, so we don't give the attention to clean up our machine and end up eating up the good amount of hardware capability or the hardware resources. So we first see the command how to remove the dangling images. So the command is docker system prune -a-f. Let's run this and see what happens. See, so we have reclaimed 111 bytes, right? So which is a good amount of space, right? So what had happened in the background? It has deleted the exited container, it has deleted the unwanted or the dangling containers, the dangling images, and it has also cleaned up the cache. Now let's list the images. Let's see what we have at the moment after cleaning them up. See, we have only one image at the moment, right? Earlier, if you see, we were having the good, so we were having the good amount of images, but now we don't have the dangling images. Let's see the containers as well. Let's list all the containers, right? So earlier, as I just cleared the screen, I'm not able to show you that, but otherwise we were having the good amount of exited containers. So with the prune command, we have cleaned up the unwanted or the dangling containers, images, volumes, cache as well, right? Ending up to recovering the 111 bytes of space on our machine. So that command, the dangling, the system prune command, in the real time, what do we do is that we create we can either create the cron, we can schedule to execute this command for every 2 or 3 days as and when we required to clean up our machine. Okay, so this is the way how we remove the dangling containers, images, keeping our machine clean up, recovering the space. Okay, so these are the advanced Docker commands which we end up using on the regular basis. Hope you like the video. I would recommend you to try them out in your local machine and implement them whenever they're required in your case. I'll come up with another video. Until then, take care.